This week's podcast is inspired by an email that I got from a mum called Jackie. Jackie sent me a lovely email telling me that she has a 7.5-year-old boy who is a happy and social child that really likes to be around people. However, this year he started to behave differently. He's beginning to want to be on his own at school and tells her that he is by himself and that he has no friends. And he's starting to hit others. I hear this so often around 7 years of age. See, up till 7, children are sort of, I'll invite everyone to my birthday party, everyone's my friend. But when children get to around 7, the peer group actually shrinks. So for girls, it shrinks and they become like best friends or a group of friends. For boys, often there's a boy that's a decision maker, what we call the alpha male. So if you read about play development, this is very, very common. And when I did my doctorate, what I found is if children on the spectrum miss the shrink, which is normally in year 2, it's very hard for them then to break in to the group. And I suspect why this little boy's hitting, because he doesn't understand the rules of change. You understand his frustration? And he's feeling horrible, but he doesn't know why. But not only that, he doesn't have the skills to actually break into those groups. If you have any students join your peer group after in year 2 and beyond with ADHD, ODD, ASD, any neurodiverse kids, you need to be more proactive. What my doctorate research says is you actually need to put in place more specific strategies to help them break into that peer group. Because when you say find a partner, the kids have already decided who their partners were. When you say, we're going on an excursion, the kids have already said, can I sit next to you? If you're going on camp, the kids are already, can I be in a cabin with you? For my kids on the spectrum, they're often not included in that and they don't know why. And then they start to catastrophize, quite rightly. Have you ever been left out of something or you don't know why you weren't invited to something? Can you imagine if you are on the spectrum and want friends and don't know how to break into the group and everything you try doesn't work? My guess is you would be pretty upset and traumatized too, which is what I see with a lot of my students. So I want to today talk about the most important proactive strategy, which is how to create lunchtime clubs to build friendships. So this is so important. And any of you who have my book, Developing Social Skills, there are hundreds of strategies in there to use. The reason I wrote that book is because I was going to schools. My doctorate research said past year 2 children are being excluded, but teachers would say, well, Sue, what can I do? And when I looked, all the books I'd used in specialist schools were all like whole lessons for 40 minutes. And mainstream teachers don't have 40 minutes in their already busy curriculum to add in social skills. So what I did in that book, they're just 5, 10-minute activities you can do with a whole class. Because I actually think we can do a lot of work helping a child with autism develop their social skills, but the peer group has to be more accepting. The peer group has to understand that when Elijah talks about trains, how they can guide him to talk about something else, how friendly things they can do to support a student who is neurodiverse. It has to be 50-50. Any of you who have friends, I'm hoping you all have friends, but you'll know that friendships are 50-50. There are times I'll ring some of my friends and they do all the talking because there's something going on in their life. And there are times I'll do all the talking. And then there are times there's sort of a balance. So I think we have to teach children how to engage with neurodiverse children, to understand that they sometimes miss the clues and cues that are happening. And the other thing I wanted to say about my girls on the spectrum, sometimes they do have a really good friend in that year 2 shrink, but they become very possessive. And if that girl goes and plays with someone else, they get upset. So that's why in my book, Developing Social Skills, I have social stories or social scripts that say things like, sometimes your friends want to play with you, sometimes they want to play with other people. They're still your friend. So in my book, there's lots of social scripts you can just photocopy and use. And again, just time savers. So that book is full of time savers, and lots of you know it's like an orangey yellow book, and it has on the front what to teach, how to teach, ready to go. And the reason it has ready to go is just photocopy and use the worksheets with the whole class or a small group, or if you're a parent, there's lots of things you can do at home to support the school. But I would say to you, if you have a child like the beautiful Jackie, who you've seen a change, please think about what we can do to support these kids, because this isn't going to fix without us doing something, and it breaks my heart. It absolutely breaks my heart. Now, there is a lovely one-page to download to go with this week's podcast, because I am so passionate that all of you actually go away and put in place some of these ideas in your school. Now, the schools I go into, we have done this over many years and built it up to be quite amazing programs. But interestingly, we always start with a couple of lunch times, and then it ends up being recess and lunch, because the schools will tell you the teachers would much rather be on doing a craft activity than wandering around dealing with issues and behaviour. This actually circumvents a huge amount of behaviour. Like, it's unbelievable. And I have teachers who volunteer to be on the yoga group, or volunteered, happy to sit in their classroom and have games being played in there, and they can sit and correct work and eat their lunch, and they will tell you that is a really lovely duty. So up to your school, but I'm going to give you some quick tips and strategies to put in place. But I just want to emphasize the challenge of the playground. Let's just take a step back. Those of you who've done my face-to-face or my live virtual or done my online course, a lot of you would have heard me talk about, imagine you're going to a party with 100 people and you know no one. And how would you feel? And half the people say, I wouldn't go. Can you understand, for a child on the spectrum, the playground is like 100, 200 people going to a party they know no one? Because so often they don't recognize faces and everyone's in the same hat and uniform. So often they can't find their friends. Have you ever been in a hall with a couple of hundred people and you know someone's there, but you can't find them? Please put yourself in this child's shoes, how difficult social is. But I want you to add another layer to that. Imagine if you have sensory processing difficulties. You don't like noise or touch, hundreds of children spilling out of classrooms, running out to the playground, and then a bell to tell you that it's time to come in. So many of my children are already hyper vigilant sensory-wise. And then you have to be able to regulate your emotions. So if children, lose or don't get a turn, they have to regulate their emotions. And this is why some of my children cope well for half of lunch, but not all of lunch. How many of you, if you were going to a party and you knew no one, would be anxious? But not only that, you probably wouldn't go when the party started. You wouldn't be the first there. So please remember, regulating your emotions is really hard. And this is exactly what Jackie's son's experiencing. He's feeling anxious already, and he's hitting kids because the slightest thing is going to set him off. He's hyper vigilant. He is hyper anxious. So the smallest thing, boom, because regulating your emotions is very hard to do if you're already feeling excluded and sad and unwelcome. Imagine that. And then the other big challenge we have is children on the spectrum have a thing called mind blindness, which is the ability to know the inferred meaning. They're literal. So if kids say, I had a ball on the weekend, they imagine kids had a big bouncy ball. If kids say, I'm trying to think of another one that will happen in the playground, you're it. Well, what does it mean? What they mean, it's your turn to chase. There's so many words in the playground that require you to know what kids mean, and that the rules change all the time. I had a beautiful boy years ago. I'm embarrassed to say that I met him in year 2 and he's now well over 24. But anyway, bless. And he's an amazing young man. But he told me that what he found really hard in the playground is the rules would change every day. So he would play handball and then the next day the rules would change and then they'd change. And what he had to tell himself, it was like Mario Kart, which was really popular then on Nintendo, had different levels. And so he told himself that's handball level 1, handball level 2, handball level 3. So it had different levels. Now, just so you know, this is the same student that when I first met him, he would stand reading the bulletin board at the school because he wanted friends but didn't know how to have them. And he worked out if he stood at the bulletin board reading who was in what teams and the lists, because they had compulsory sport at the school and everyone's names are up. When children came up to read what sport they were in, often he could chat to them. Oh, you're playing soccer this week, which is such a clever strategy. But he was lonely. He was just doing that. And those, again, of you that have been to my workshops know I call that being at the bar. He was standing at the bar. He was standing reading those lists knowing other children would come up. That's like at a party going to the bar. So literalness, mind blindness is a huge challenge for my kids, and often why they struggle to regulate their emotions, because they miss the social cues. They miss that look on someone's face like, I've had enough of hearing about Star Wars, and they burn their peers out because their peers are trying to tell them, I've had enough, but they miss the cues. So please be aware of that. And guess what? Part of autism spectrum disorder is challenges with social skills. So let's go back. The challenge is sensory, emotional, literalness, being mind blindness, and social skills. And add this layer. The peer group are so caught up in their own worrying who their friends are and what group they're in. They don't have time to worry about another student. Think of your own kids. Like I know with my kids, right through to high school, they'd come home like, oh, there's been someone got kicked out of our group, or this kid's really annoying everybody. Guess what? They don't really care. They're okay. They don't go over to that kid and go, hey, mate, everyone's getting a bit grumpy with you, or hey, you're dominating the group, so they're thinking of tossing you out of the group. Kids do this all the time. When my daughter was at school, they had she went to a girls' school and I went to a co-ed school. So I found the whole understanding the girls' school culture quite different. But it crack up. She came home and she'd say to me, so these girls are in my family. So they're her close friends. The next level were her cousins. So they were people who could join their group and come in and out. And there were like layers and they were named labels. I mean, unbelievable, but this is how teenage girls work. It is complex. I don't think I would have coped in that system. I think I was a tomboy at heart and I like to go and kick the footy and do things like that at school and play handball. I think I found all that a bit much. But anyway, I'm fascinated watching my daughters navigate that socialness, and they are neurotypical. So imagine a neurodiverse kid. But back to my point, they're all just worried about them. The peer group is all about who am I going to be with, not who's being left out. So a lot of it is we need to acknowledge that the peers aren't always looking out for each other, and it is hard. It is really hard. And we then need to be proactive. I can't emphasize enough we need to be proactive. So my question to you is, what are you currently doing? What are you doing? Have you got the library open? Because my doctorate research says that 70% of kids will go to the library. But guess what? They're not kids who read books. They just go there because it's safe and it's quiet and at least they're not wandering around. But if the library's not open, where are they going? Are they wandering? Are they walking with the yard duty teacher? Doesn't that tell you they want to connect with someone? They just don't know who? Are they playing with much older kids or much younger kids? Can I ask every one of you to just go out in the playground and spend 5 minutes observing a neurodiverse child, or a child who comes back in after the break more anxious than they went out? That tells you we need to be looking what's happening. And then, who are they playing with? Have they got friends? Have they got a range of friends, or have they only got one friend? Are they a girl who's masking it, who's, trying to fit in, who's watching the other girls and actually not being her true self, but madly trying to fit in? And how exhausting is that, constantly trying to fit in with your peers? But my biggest question to you is this: are they getting the same outcomes as their peers? Are they coming back in relaxed and happy and had a lovely break? Because the reason we have breaks is to come back in ready to learn. So many of my children come back in more anxious than they went out, come in crying, come in needing some time on their own because they spent all that energy masking it. Please have a think about this. Just take a moment to observe what's happening. And then ask yourself, how are we supporting that child? Are we addressing their individual needs? Do we need to do more than just say, which I hate to say, I've seen in schools where they go, oh, go and find a friend to play with. Well, this child is literal and they don't have a friend. See, just telling someone to find a friend, that's really hard. Or telling them, go and find someone. Well, who? Who is someone? How can you actually connect them? Imagine if I said to you, go off and find someone. Okay, I'll let my high horse run away. But I'm asking you to be more proactive than reactive. And I'm asking you to think about this. When's the last time you made a friend? How did you make that friend? My guess it was over a common interest. I've got so many friends I made through watching sport, with watching my kids play sport. Well, we were standing on the boundary watching our kids play sport and we became friendly. But we just meet up at the sport every week. We didn't actually exchange phone numbers or emails. We actually just had a common interest, which was watching our children play sport. Now, I'd highly recommend you have listened to my podcast or my blog on making friends, but there's a lovely visual in that blog this week, which is the stages of a friendship. The first stage is saying hello and them saying hello back. The next is where you might do something together where it's like an acquaintance. Then we move to where we might start to see them as a potential friend, and we might start to notice that we enjoy the same things or have similar animals, or, we will start to chat and find we have some familiarity in there. The next is where we're actually making an effort to catch up, where we're doing more than standing on the boundary of the football field, So I want you to think, how many of your friendships move from that, okay, we catch up because we're watching a sport together or doing yoga together or doing an activity together. When's the last time you took that friendship to a next level where you're like, make the effort to catch up outside the shared interest? So for children on the spectrum and neurodiversity, that's taking it to a play date or catching up online. You need to think how that would look. But it's a funnel. If you have a look at the visual, the first stage saying hello, we have lots of people, but the further down the funnel, you get less and less people. And then a friend is someone you constantly make an effort to catch up with. And then close friends are a person who you want to share secrets. But many of my children just want to go to stage 6, from hello to being close friends. So I highly recommend you have a think about the stages of friendships and how you can support children to move through friendships. But particularly for the girls on the spectrum, you might like to show them that visual so they understand the different phases of friendships. And even like they're saying hello to where you can hug people, because some of my children want to hug everyone, but we need to explain, where does hugging come in to that level of friendship? And that depends on the age. So when did you last make a friend? When did you move someone from hello to sharing secrets? How long did that process take? Was it one meeting? Probably not. So what I want to say is, for us to help children on the spectrum develop close friendships, we need to put in things like lunchtime clubs so they can catch up regularly, so they can be more engaged. I love the saying by Benjamin Franklin, tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. We need to involve children in social skills. We need to involve them in connection. We need to involve them in friendships and clubs and activities at lunchtime that actually involve them in connecting. Just saying find a friend or go and play isn't actually involving them at all in their playing in the playground. Now, people with a lived experience give us some massive insights into how hard school was for them. Bullied, teased, isolated is pretty much what most people who have a lived experience tell us about their experience in school playgrounds. But I always like to look at what helped. What do people on the spectrum tell us helped? Well, Temple Grandin says shared interests. So for her, that was horses, having science experiments, shared interests, NASA, all of these things she loved. Temple Grandin says having a shared experience helped her connect with people. Chris Bonello, who many of you have heard me interview him, chess. Chess is like if you read his blogs on Autistic Not Weird, he talks a lot about how chess helped him with relationships. But also he was a scout, and that was a big thing for him, being part of the Scouts. And I have a lot of kids at Girl Guide Scouts. They're a very inclusive organisation. And remember, Scouts and Girl Guides were originally set up for children with disabilities. If you look at the origin, you will find that that was the origin, particularly for Girl Guides. It was for children with disabilities. And Dean Beadle tells us drama and Doctor Who. And I love it when he says, I wouldn't have gone to a group called Social Skills because I didn't have social skills. Why would I join that? But drama, I learnt social skills, but I called it drama, and I loved all the theatre. And any of you who follow Dean on Facebook, I highly recommend you do. He does the funniest Facebook lives, and he gets dressed up, and he still uses drama all the time. And he's taken up singing later in life, and later in life, he's only 30. But anyway, I've known him for a long time. So anyway, isn't that funny how people grow up and you forget that they're 30 sounds so young for me now. Anyway, what are we going to do? We are going to put in proactive strategies, and I'm going to give you 8 tips to setting up a friendship club or passive playground or whatever you want to call it, and we're going to get into that. So first of all, when you observe the kids who are not currently coping in the playground, who are looking for friends and don't know how to have them, the first thing I want you to do is look at their current interests or skills. So I've had children set up origami clubs, Lego clubs. I want you to look at what are their current skills. You're going to use their strengths or shared interests, as Temple Grandin would say. And then you're going to name the club. And it has to be a really positive name, like World of Fun, Lunchtime Club, Rest and Relaxation, Games Group. Name the club. And then decide, well, how often is it going to be open? 1 to 5 days, recess, lunch, or both? Now, what I have found over the years, if it's only open, once or twice a week, often those students will find each other to be together. But it's important you say, tomorrow the club's not on, but if you guys want to get together, why don't you meet here? And tell them where to meet. Because remember, 400 or 500 kids, 1,000 kids in a playground, it's very hard to find each other. So have a think about that. The big thing is to decide the number of students who can attend. Some clubs get really big, and I think sometimes a little bit too big. So you need to decide how many people, just more sensory, if it's a noisy activity, how many kids do we want in that club or activity? Where's our limit there to get the most out of it? And then decide on the age range, because sometimes we do it as a peer support. So the year 6s will do activities with the year 3s. Or is there something for the younger kids, middle and older? You need to decide. Or do you not need to start it till year 2 anyway, because that younger group are all playing quite well? Here is one of the biggest decisions you need to make. How will the students join the club? Now, the schools I go into, we use a range from the teacher selecting, so they need a ticket to go, to self-selected, to bring a friend, to open door, or teachers identify on the day who would benefit from the program. So you need to just be clear as a community. And my teacher aides listening, Angels, I find you a fabulous guide for this. You often know a lot more about the kids than me. I had a wonderful aide a few years ago who realized that she went across a few classrooms and she had a whole lot of kids who owned guinea pigs. So she set up like the guinea pig club. And they would get together and they'd talk about their guinea pigs, and they'd had books on types of guinea pigs, and they did drawings of guinea pigs, and they could craft on guinea pigs, and they even made little origami guinea pigs. And that was a really fabulous way for them to connect. But the teacher aide was the one who connected these kids and went, hey. The other thing, I was talking to a parent who's got a 40-year-old actually, and I was asking her what helped her son. And she said the teacher aide really facilitated bringing the other kids to him and creating friendships. And what I love hearing about this, he is still friends with those people on Facebook. Now he's 40. Now, Facebook didn't exist when he was younger, but he's reconnected with those people on Facebook. And to me, that is a beautiful outcome of an angel or teacher assistant finding the right kids to connect. And that is part of our job, making those connections. See, I've got friends where I'm like, I wouldn't have them come to dinner with them. Those four would work really well. That's part of our job. Who would be kids who connect well? Those guinea pig kids all had a shared interest, but I need to think, well, which kids would be good in that group? So we're going to decide the club, but we're going to decide which children to connect into that group, who are going to make a long-term, remember the layers of friendship. We want them to end up being close friends. That's what we're aiming for. And then you need to decide where to meet. And I think you need a range of options for different kids. Some kids, the classroom, because there's not all the sensory, it's a far more controlled environment. Some of my kids who need movement and action and fresh air, the grass area or the oval or the undercover area. Or one of my schools, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, has a gardening club. And oh my goodness, little Aaron last year after lockdown said to his mum and dad, I'm so happy to go to school today because the gardening club's on. And now I know what to do at lunchtime. Please remember the other days he doesn't know what to do and it's heartbreaking. So please think about that. But anyway, the garden's sort of in a quiet area and they've put benches there and it's been fabulous. I personally, huge fan of gardening because then you can join a community garden. It's a lifelong skill. It's something you can talk about right into adulthood. Not saying there aren't adults who talk about Lego after watching Hamish's Lego show. I'm sure lots of you realize that lots of things that we think, what's age appropriate. There are men who have trains in sheds. But my point is, I think gardening's a great lifelong skill. You might have a paved area, or one of the schools I go to have an area called the rainforest. So have a think about where you're going to meet. And then you need to think of what activities. That can be music, board games, Lego, cards, chess, computer, jigsaws, drawing, colouring, craft, origami, gardening group, even a watering the garden group, relaxation, sensory room, Nintendo, PlayStation, interactive whiteboard club, iPads, Avery, exercise bike, mini trampoline, cooking, and more. You name it, you can do it. Just really, the options are limitless. So I just wanted to share what one of the schools I go to offer. So at Recess, they offer 5 days a week. It started off being much smaller than that. And they even have an after-school Lego club now too. So at Recess, they'll have library, Doll's Place, skipping, Hungry Hippos, art, that's get a ticket. So that is for students that have been identified that need a bit more support. Now, rather than, I'm a big believer in this, there is no point excluding a child from the playground. They're not learning skills. So the kids who are going to art would be children who in the past would have had to sit in the office because of their behaviour at recess or the day before. Instead, they get a ticket to go to the art where it's supervised. We're practicing sharing, turn taking, emotional regulation. I mean, I love doing board games for that reason. Board games, you have to learn to win, lose, wait for a turn. I think board games teach a huge range of skills. There's a chess club, a gardening group, finger skateboards, a colouring competition, and basketball hoop. That is just at recess. Amazing, right? Amazing. And at lunch, they have library, Doll's Place, skipping, elastics. Remember elastics? Captain ball, art again, ticket only, finger skateboards, and fly. What range, okay? That's just one day. The next day, they add in computer group, target practice on the wall, football for K to 2. So that's just like reception to year 2, prep to year 2. So the younger kids, cards and rob the nest. And then the next day, they also offer drama, drumming, basketball, 3 to 6, scavenger hunt, 3 to 6. How many kids would love to be in a scavenger hunt? So many fantastic things. But I just thought I'd share, actually what the school's doing. It's amazing. In the past in Australia, the Woolworths Discovery Garden was where if you spend, I think, over $30, you get a little plot. Again, remember, I only use the content from this transcript I've just uploaded now, and also give me the challenges and solutions that would help a classroom teacher. I'm holding mine up now, a little seedling it's a little seed and there's different seeds and it tells you what it's going to be and you get to grow that. And for me, it's more than gardening. You're teaching seasons because you actually need to look up what season to plant it. You're teaching food groups. And then once you've grown it, you can cook with them. Now, Woolworths provide recipes, or those of you who have my cookbooks, which are designed for children with autism, you could adapt the recipes and add some of the things into that. So I highly recommend a cooking club, by the way. It's one of my favorite ways to teach children. Having a cooking club is a brilliant way to learn so many skills. And also, it's not about eating the food, remember? It's about sharing, turn taking, communicating, going to the fridge and knowing what goes in the fridge, what goes in a cupboard, categorizing, life skills like, turning on an oven, turning on a time, washing the dishes. So much involved. Now, last but not least, I know a lot of you will be like, Sue, how are we going to supervise this? Well, that's a really good question. But some schools use peer support, as I mentioned, and use the older kids to supervise. Some do a call out, like who wants to do it. And it's amazing, actually, how many kids want to be involved in that peer support. Of course, you can have staff supervision, and I would encourage schools. I actually think this is a better way to use your teacher assistant time than often in-class support. Some of my kids, if they've developed connection and friends, are going to behave better in class, and you're not going to have all the issues after morning tea and lunch. And they're going to be happier and feel more positive about coming to school. So for me, I think social skills are just as important as any part of your curriculum support. And for children who are lonely, I would much rather they have a lovely time at recess and lunch and their teacher aide supports that. And then when they go back into class, they mightn't get as many hours in class, but I suspect they'll be more engaged because they'll feel better. So really up to you what you want to use. But of course, you can use staff. And as I say, I have a lot of schools where teachers do it as yard duty. But I also just do it where we put out the equipment. So I've had a school where we just went to Vinnie's or Brotherhood of St. Lawrence. We got 4 tubs and we asked them, can you put books in here? Can you put trains in here? Can you put Lego in here? We didn't even need more money. And we just put those tubs out. And in fact, my boy with us just put the tubs out and put them out for playtime and put them away. I've had another boy who set up his own origami club. I've had kids set up Star Wars clubs. I've had all sorts of kids actually with ASD embrace running this club themselves. What a great skill. But we still need to set rules and boundaries on how kids can be included and who's going. You can't just let that run without a little bit of thinking about how it's going to look. So I just want to remind you, if you're in an inclusive school, that most parents with ASD, according to my doctorate, send children to their local school wanting them to make social connection. And I think we need to recognize that a lot of them aren't achieving those goals. And here's the question I really want to leave you on. How many birthday parties or social activities do you believe the child with neurodiversity has been included in? Is inclusion finishing at your school gate? Sorry, I get really emotional, but I have seen where children invite everyone in their class to their birthday party and not a child with autism spectrum. And I don't think that's acceptable. I don't think that isn't a good outcome. And as if that child doesn't know. But also, it makes me so sad to think that children think that's okay not to include that child. So if you ask yourself, how many activities has this child been included in? And the answer is 0. Can you think about putting in place some proactive strategies that I've talked about today? And if you're a parent and you say, Sue, I'm with you. I get upset about this too, but I don't know what to do. Can I ask that you think about joining your child up to some clubs outside school where they connect with other children, like-minded children? You know, taekwondo, karate, scouts, girl guides, even join, just have a look what's available locally. Or go to parks more often and play in a park where your child gets to practice social skills that they require in a school playground. Or maybe talk to your school about putting in place some of the things I've talked about today. I hope that from today, you're all feeling actually inspired to go and do something, to go Okay, I'm going to observe the kid in the playground and see what's happening. Gosh, they're actually doing really well. Great, let's leave it. But I'll keep an eye on it. Or, wow, I did not realize what was happening. So my favorite resources for teaching social skills, if you want to support children more, is my Developing Social Skills book. So I don't normally go, my book's the best, but I've just promised you there's not a lot out there that is just for everyone. But I also love a board game called the Socially Speaking board game. Now, it is expensive, but every school I know who owns it absolutely loves it. And I would recommend it's one of the activities you have out if you're doing a board game club. So the Socially Speaking board game has heaps of cards, but not only that, you can take the cards out and do them with the whole class. That's how I love to do them. Like, you pull it out, what to do if your friend says they don't want to play with you. As a class, get some answers to that so the children can hear how their peers would respond. When you ask a friend, what did you do on the weekend? How could they answer that? There's so many fantastic cards in there that prompt me for the whole class. Now, I do like when I do it with the whole class to actually change it like to more than one thing so that there's not just one answer, because many children with ASD only have one solution. If they don't have anyone to play with, they only have one solution. I would love you to look at having a range of answers. So you write the card out on like a scrapbook. A teacher in Canberra taught me this. She'd write the card out in the scrapbook. Then she'd put down the options the peers said that you could do. So what to do if you haven't finished your homework. Yeah. There's a whole lot of options you can do. Ask a friend to help you. Let the teacher know you'll hand it in tomorrow. These are all social skills. And this is often why children on the spectrum get into trouble, because they don't know how to negotiate or talk to teachers about these things. What to do if you don't have someone to play with? Well, you can ask someone else. You can play on your own. A lot of children don't have that option. So then they don't even know you can play on your own. So then as a class, you might brainstorm, what can you play on your own? So really great way. The other thing on that board game that the kids all love is there's a square you land on and you have to say, I have peas for tea in different emotions, like in an angry voice, I have peas for tea. And then in a happy voice, I have peas for tea. I like to add sarcasm in there with older kids too, because some of my children misread sarcasm. But what I love about that, the kids love landing on the square. But more importantly, remember, part of social skills is being able to express your emotions. So that's why at the back of my Developing Social Skills book, there's a bit on feelings and helping children understand feelings. But many of my children are either happy or sad. They don't know all those different tones in between. So the I have peas for tea is a fun activity and the whole class loves it. So I hope you've got some good ideas. And I just wanted to finish on a quote that's in Anna Tulliman's and my book on The Ultimate Guide to School and Home. Just a reminder that improvement in behaviour doesn't come from the social scripts and the things we write. It actually comes from improved understanding of events and situations. So for me, the friendship clubs actually help the children understand events and situations. By running a friendship group or a playground club, I'm actually helping the children understand how to engage and wait and interact, how to talk to people. So we get improved behaviour, an outcome of these clubs we're putting in place where the children actually get to practice the skills. If they're currently wandering around the playground or sitting in the library, they're not learning social skills. And for me, I think this is more important than anything we measure on NAPLAN. To get a job in the future, children with autism spectrum need a certain level of social skills. To me, all kids need help with social skills these days. Too many are spending too long on their devices. So I highly recommend that you print out all the documents that go with this week's podcast. And please let me know what you've implemented after today listening. I love to hear what's happening in schools. I hope you've got some great tips and strategies from this podcast. If you enjoy learning with me, I highly recommend you think about doing a course this year. Not only do I have courses by me, I have them with people with a lived experience, Temple Grandin, Dean Beadle, or other educators like Laura Kirby on PDA. I have a wealth of courses that'll make a difference to you. So make sure you check out all my online courses because you can learn online, anywhere, anytime, in a place that suits you, at a speed that suits you. So check out all the online courses that are available to make a difference to you and the children you know.